We'll start today with our exclusive Canadian interview with Prime Minister Mark Carney. On Tuesday, he introduced Canadians to his new cabinet, made up of 28 core ministers.
The Honourable Melanie Joly,
some
Minister
familiar faces,
the Honourable Tim Hodgson, Minister of Energy
new
and
faces,
Natural
plus an additional 10 secretaries of state. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Less than an hour later, Carney sat down with me inside the cabinet room. Here's part one of that conversation. Hi, Prime Minister. Pleasure to host you today. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Vashi.
I wanted to start off on your cabinet selections, and in particular, whom you selected for your front bench, because I think a lot of Canadians, physically would have looked at that front bench today and said it looked remarkably like the previous government. Is that not the opposite of what they elected you to do?
Well, there's a number of things that are different in that front bench. So if you look, for example, François-Philippe Champagne is the Minister of Finance. He became the Minister of Finance when I became Prime Minister for that brief period following winning the leadership election. Lots of experience, but not the Minister of Finance. Now he's going to have a real run at being Minister of Finance. Melanie Joly moving from Foreign Affairs to becoming Minister of Industry. This is a government that has a huge focus on the economies and specifically cost of living, but really growing wages and jobs for Canadians. So she has a crucial role, but it's a new role for her. Dominic Leblanc as the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. I need experience in that role that Dominic has. He's got great relations with a number of the premiers. We are going to focus on building one Canadian economy, changing how we're doing big projects, all in the course of the next several months. Plus, he's been one of the main, if not the main, interlocutors with the level of the U.S. government below President Trump. So I don't want to switch everybody out in that circumstance. And then, you look at Anita Anand, who's moving into foreign affairs. It's a big change into those jobs. So there's some similarities. There's experience being deployed in different ways. I'm a new Prime Minister, and let's look at the cabinet as a whole, because I'm not quite sure I make the distinction between the quote front bench and the cabinet as a whole. We only have 28 cabinet ministers. That's down from the mid-upper 40s, some previous governments. Half of those ministers are new. Never been cabinet ministers before. In many cases, they're new to Parliament as a whole. So we're bringing in a lot of fresh energy, fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, alongside with experience. And that's a good team. That's a good management team, in my judgment. Obviously, I spent a lot of time trying to construct it that way.
And I do take the point on the fresh faces, but even when you point to the experience of those who are in the sort of biggest roles, the reason why I highlight them is because they were at the forefront of the decisions that the previous government made.
I disagree with that.
They were. I mean, Melanie Joly, François-Philippe Champagne, he led the industrial policy. Now he'll be in charge of finance. Dominic Leblanc led a lot of those files as well. We are used to hearing from them, justifying and explaining the decisions that Justin Trudeau made.
Well,
so now we're going to hear from them again.
Well, first off, now you're hearing from me. I'm a new Prime Minister. I'm the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. I've got very clear set of objectives, which I laid out in the course of my initial government from that cabinet table. Cancel the carbon tax right there. In fact, just to our right of my first act. But developing this focus on one Canadian economy, getting rid of internal trade barriers. We'll do our job by Canada Day. That means the federal government. We're working with the provinces so that they can move out of the way. Some of them are moving really fast. Nova Scotia, Ontario, others moving fast. We're trying to get all of them. But plus unlocking these major projects that are going to build this economy for the next generations. Not just growth today, but growth for generations. That's a focus. That is an entirely new focus of this government. At the same time, we're working on this economic security partnership with the Americans and diversifying our trade partnership. Different focus, different people. I'm bringing a different, I mean, there are so many differences. As I say, half of the cabinet is different. Big change in terms of priorities. Big change in terms of speed. This is one of the fastest swearing in Canadian history. It will be one of the fastest returns in Parliament in Canadian history. You'll see with the speech from the throne, which the King will deliver in whatever it is, 12 days' time, 13 days' time. And in that speech from the throne are going to enumerate some priorities, including success by Canada Day. So we're going to go hard.
So how do you articulate, because you conceded today, you did through the campaign, that the mandate you have is one for change. It's against that backdrop that I'm asking those questions about those big faces for your cabinet. How would you articulate to Canadians what that change will actually look like? Is it just you?
So, well, no. Okay, if I may, you are going into process and personnel. I'm going to results. I'm talking about one Canadian economy. I'm talking about getting rid of all the federal
But
barriers.
those personnel didn't deliver.
No. Please, let me answer the question. Those are real results that will happen or not. We will either pass that legislation or not, first point. Secondly, in terms of working with the provinces, working with Indigenous peoples, working with the territories, identifying the nation-building process, a process that has already begun. I helped start it during my first few days as Prime Minister in the previous mandate, now going to accelerate through, already talking with Premier Smith, Premier Moe, Premier Ford, Premier Legault, all the premiers about Premier Canoop, sorry, now I'm going to offend somebody because I haven't mentioned them all, but they're all working on this and working towards our Saskatoon First Ministers meeting, June 2nd. Again, that's a tangible thing. You'll see where we're coming together on specific projects. What's the federal government doing to support those? What are we doing with respect to our relationship with the United States? How that's so these are all real things, and to reduce it, if you know, to faces, personnel, and then by the way, to ignore half of the cabinet, which is brand new, literally. Never been in cabinet before, and now they're in very senior roles at core priorities for the government.
It's definitely not to reduce the new people that I ask. It's because, you know, to be fair,
can I remind as well?
Yes, you can, but I want to finish after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you finish and then I'll.
I was just going to say that, you know, I covered that government extensively. Those are the ministers who told me time and time again the carbon tax was the only way to address climate change, who told me time and time again the only way to be fiscally responsible was to bring in capital gains tax changes. Yes, you came in and you changed that, but these are the people for 10 years who defended what you say you have a mandate to change from. It's not just a personnel thing that I'm asking about.
Well, let's be clear about mandates. We just had an election, you might have noticed. I think you covered it, right?
Correct.
19 million Canadians voted. More Canadians voted for a political party, the Liberal Party, than ever before. We have more votes than anyone else. We have majorities in 7 of the 10 provinces. We have the most seats in Parliament, and we ran on a very clear platform of change. Canadians, more Canadians chose that platform of change than anybody else's. So we have a clear mandate. I come and all the deputies, Liberal deputies in Parliament come with a responsibility to deliver that change. That's what, you know, Canadians, they put their trust in us. They expect us to deliver. And I'm going to put together the cabinet, the legislative agenda, and work with the provinces, work with Indigenous peoples, work with the territories in order to deliver for Canadians. And Canadians will judge the change that they receive. That's the right thing. And I'll do what's necessary with the people I have around the table in order to deliver that.
I wanted to ask about what that change looks like. You got a question today about, for example, like tangibly, how will Canadians know that their life is better? And I think more specifically, like you made some very, you know, specific promises during the campaign about what would happen to our economy. The biggest transformation since the end of the Second World War. It would become the most prosperous economy in the G7. How and by when?
Okay, well, first off, so what we're looking to do is unlock an investment era in this country. So investment in conventional energy, oil and gas, investment in clean energy, getting up to doubling the rate of home building over several years so that the rate of new home construction in this country is twice as much as it was previously. Those are very tangible things. We have to make big changes. Some in federal legislation, some in terms of how we work with the provinces, some in terms of how we finance certain activities, all of which we're prepared to do. Canadians will see that change as we deliver that change. But there are more immediate things that we can do for Canadians, and we intend to do them. So, for example, we, as I said a few hours ago, just before I sat down with you, we will deliver that middle-class tax cut by Canada Day. So we're going to go to Parliament and we are going to table a motion for that middle class tax cut up to $825 for a 2-earning family in Canada, that would be in place by Canada Day. That's an example. Also, the cutting the GST on new homes. So there are tangible things in the near term, but then the transformation, which you rightly talk about, the transformation of the economy, those are big structural changes, which we need to do big things in order to get them going, and we are going to do them. You're going to hear a lot about them. You're going to hear a lot about them from different people. Let me give you an example. We'll talk about change. Gregor Robertson. Gregor Robertson is the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure. Gregor Robertson has never been a federal MP. He's got one of the most important areas. Let's talk about change. Tim Hodgson, brand new, never been an MP. He is Minister of Enercan. He's Minister of Enercan, so think critical minerals, think conventional oil and gas, think electricity, think trade corridors. He needs to help deliver that. We're bringing in external expertise that Canadians validated. These people, of course, were elected in their ridings. They're coming straight into cabinet. Huge mandate for change. We're going to work together in order to deliver it.
And I have some specific questions about those files, but on the bigger picture for Canadians, are their incomes going to go up?
Well, that's
is
the
GDP
point.
per capita going to go up? Like, how
Yeah,
am,
no, of course,
how am I going to know
the
tangibly that you have accomplished what you said you're going to do, which is probably the most wide, the largest in scope promise we've heard from a politician.
Absolutely, it is. Look, we are in. Okay, take a step back, and I do think it's worthwhile reminding ourselves that we are in a crisis. We are in, in my judgment, the biggest crisis that we have faced in generations, because of the American tariffs, but also because the global economy, the way it's structured, the way it's working, is fundamentally changing. And that's an economy that we have relied on in Canada. Others have as well, but we've relied on, and we need to adapt and we need to get ahead of that. So we need to make big changes. Now, in the end, when you look at affordability, when you look at, I'd like to talk about it in terms of Canadians getting ahead. People have a sense of getting ahead. And, as year goes after year, do I have more money in my pocket after paying the rent, paying for groceries, paying for cell phone bills? Or do I feel like I'm falling behind? In periods of big inflation, you can be falling behind. But you can also have periods of relatively low inflation, but you just said it, your wages aren't growing fast enough. So yes, ultimately, you've got to get to, if we want to talk like economists, I'm very happy to, but probably the way Canadians think. Yes, you want to see GDP per capita increasing. We need to see productivity increasing fundamentally. There is not a button marked productivity around that cabinet table that you push and it instantly changes. So we have to do a variety of things in order for that to happen. Some of them relate to those big projects. A big element is going to be, if we actually do get this one Canadian economy, that's going to drive through. Something that wasn't talked about a lot during the election campaign, but will be incredibly important to making people more productive themselves and therefore getting higher wages themselves, not replacing their jobs, but making them more productive, will be AI and the digital economy, how well we're going to implement that. And so we have a new minister of Digital and AI, Evan Solomon, new to Parliament, coming in, clear mandate, clear resources in order to drive that.